I'm going to begin this video by stating what I suspect is blatantly obvious. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is not the end of the line for the journey of Cal Kestis. Now before we get into that, heavy spoiler warning, so if you haven't played Star Wars Jedi Survivor through to the end, then I'd recommend doing so before watching this video, because it's impossible to discuss this topic without utilising spoilers as a springboard for that conversation. So if you don't wish to receive spoilers today, then please come back to this video at a later date when you've finished the game for yourselves. In theory, it's not going anywhere. Also, if you don't really care for spoilers, then you're more than welcome to stay just the same as anybody else. But don't say I didn't warn you. With Jedi Survivor now having been out for the best part of 2 weeks, I think it's fair to say that despite some teething issues, it's been received relatively well. In fact, I believe it to be a fantastic story and a fantastic game, even though in those 2 weeks it's received 4 patches, which speaks to it being a special flavour of fucked on the optimization front. But I came away from this experience feeling as if there absolutely will be a third game featuring Cal Kestis, as there are plenty of things in Jedi Survivor that make me feel this way, whether it's plot related, electronic arts related, or just blatant meta nonsense. So I fancied going over that and how it would translate into a story in a third Star Wars Jedi game, whatever that subtitle will be. Oh god. On the front of EA's license to produce Star Wars games, they signed a 10-year deal back in 2013, so at the end of 2023, that's going to be up. In that time frame, they've had ups and downs. It was surprising that EA didn't milk the utter shit out of that deal and have only really released 5 Star Wars games in that time. Battlefront, Battlefront 2, Squadrons, Jedi Fallen Order, and Jedi Survivor. That's if you're not considering mobile games and expansions to a game that was released before the deal. I'm also just discovering they made a Star Wars Sims. Of course they did. The undeniable low point of that deal was the surprise mechanics fiasco that came along with Battlefront 2's release, in which a lot of the progression was locked behind paywalls and there were loot boxes, and EA found themselves in a spot of legal bother there. In that time, I believe the deal between EA and Disney was on the rocks as a result, though don't quote me on that one. But over the past decade, Electronic Arts has held exclusive rights to make Star Wars games, which is now coming up on expiry, meaning other studios and other developers with other publishers will soon be able to also make Star Wars games, provided they acquire licensing. And there are some examples, for example Quantic Dream with whatever Star Wars Eclipse is. And then of course there's Ubisoft, who I'm led to believe is developing a Star Wars game of some description. So obviously Disney and Lucasfilm have an interest in continuing the production of Star Wars video games. After all, gaming is now the highest grossing entertainment industry. So whilst EA's exclusive rights to publish Star Wars games is almost over, it's entirely possible that they, alongside many other studios and publishers now, will be able to make Star Wars games provided they get the green light from Disney and Lucasfilm. And if Jedi Survivor is any indication, then Respawn Entertainment would most certainly like to. The reason why I believe this is because Star Wars Jedi Survivor is very authentic to the nature of a middle part of a trilogy. Jedi Fallen Order was very much so a beginning. It was concrete in its ending. In case a second game never got the green light, it would still function as its own narrative. As a result, it was open enough for a sequel to potentially exist, but it was also conclusive enough that if it didn't, it wouldn't be the end of the world for that story's credibility. Jedi Survivor, in my opinion, is very different in how it handles itself being a sequel, as it should be. Its very existence as a sequel gives it the armour it needs in order to be more open with how it concludes itself. So as a result, the ending is far more open and far less necessarily satisfying. It was satisfying in itself, but only if it goes somewhere. In that sense, it takes on the role of a very traditional middle part, where the ending doesn't feel like this massive triumph. Instead, it's just a fitting conclusion to that chapter before the story progresses forwards. I suppose not dissimilarly to Attack of the Clones, The Empire Strikes Back, or even The Last Jedi. In other words, Jedi Survivor fully puts a trilogy on the cards for the saga of Cal Kestis, albeit in a predictable Star Wars fashion. And I would like to dedicate the remainder of this video into talking about what could possibly be next for our Ginger Jedi friend. So this is where the spoilers come in, my friends. In my opinion, if spoilers are a concern, you've had ample opportunity now to click off. So let's dive in. Jedi Fallen Order was a story about Cal Kestis reconnecting with the Force as a Jedi Padawan following the death of his master, and that led him into the path of what's effectively his new master in Seer Junda. That story sees him accept the past and reconnect with his abilities, finally achieving the rank of Jedi Knight. Star Wars Jedi Survivor then goes on to expand on Cal Kestis as a now experienced Jedi Knight, in which we see how far he's come, learning new abilities and utilising old ones like a pro certainly would. There's certainly some master influence, with Seer still knocking about and also Eno Cordova, so though he's a perfectly capable Jedi Knight, he still has that safety net which gets ripped away from him in the story, courtesy of this dickhead and the Star Wars continuity enforcer. In the final act of Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Cal has accomplished what he set out to do. He has the compass to Tanalorr, and everything seems dandy. However, over the course of the story, he's continuously made the mistake of trusting this man, his new friend Bode Akuna, who is actually an ISB operative working reluctantly for the Empire. He betrays Cal, resulting in the deaths of Eno Cordova and Seer Junda, and escapes with the compass. He also turns out to be another Jedi who survived the Purge. Upon those events unfolding, Cal is absolutely enraged, and we get to see a darker take on the character. In his pursuit of Bode, he even taps into the dark side, and through its application to gameplay we discover how intoxicating that truly is, as it in itself makes Cal significantly stronger when he's using it. The reason for Bode's betrayal is not to turn Cal over to the Empire, but rather to find a home for his daughter Carter to be safe from them. Betraying Cal because he wasn't fond of the idea of Cal giving Tanalorr to the Hidden Path to function as a hideout for others persecuted by the Empire. So Cal, Grease, BD-1 and Merrin track Bode down, a plot point that culminates on Tanalorr itself. Long story short, another fight ensues in which Cal taps into the dark side once more and defeats Bode, hoping that he won't have to kill him, though he's proven wrong rather quickly. And now the Stinger Mantis crew gains a new member, Bode's daughter Carter. However, if the final scene of the main story is any indication, Cal's journey has not ended yet, and there's another story to be told here. The final few lines of the game explain this far better than I perhaps can.
You let me walk my own path when I needed to. You taught me what it truly means to be a Jedi. Now you're gone. We will continue your legacy, Seer. We will build something that can outlast the Empire. I promise you that. I promise. But I'm scared. I almost lost myself. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready for what comes next.
Guide her through the darkness.
It's clear that something is going to happen next. There's sure to be some ramifications to Cal even occasionally tapping into the dark side, and at the same time, if Cere's lines are to be taken seriously, then Carter will need guidance. However, there is no Cere, at least not physically. And with Eno Cordova also gone, I suppose that means the burden of becoming a mentor is going to fall to Cal Kestis himself. And considering her father was a Jedi, I think it's safe to assume that for the purpose of storytelling, Carter may be force sensitive herself. And so the dynamic I see unfolding in a third Cal Kestis game is one that explores the darkness that's awakened within him whilst he grapples with the challenges that come with assuming the role of a master, at least in absence of somebody better qualified. The entire plot of Jedi Survivor was him finding a home somewhere where the Empire couldn't find him. However, the struggle of the hidden path resonated with him, and by the end of the story he believes that the Empire needs to be faced someday, why not by him? Whilst I'm sure the Continuity Enforcer will have something to say about that in that story, for the time being that seems to be the natural progression for Cal Kestis. We've seen him as an apprentice, we've seen him as a Jedi Knight. Perhaps the third game will flip the script and see him in the role of a mentor. As for Cal's personal battle with the dark side, the ending to Jedi Survivor feels like just the beginning. He says it himself at the end of the story. He's afraid of what comes next. Perhaps I'm reading too much into the line, but it's at the very end of the game and it makes sense for it to be impactful. So the prospective sequel to Star Wars Jedi Survivor, in my mind, will probably see Cal navigating that darkness whilst simultaneously guiding Carter. And considering he's literally killed her father right in front of her, I'm sure there will be ramifications there too. How that then translates to gameplay might be another question. After all, it's a video game and it needs to at least be fun in the gameplay department. But hey, that's not my problem to solve. But I'm imagining a time jump to encompass Carter being a bit taller than 3 feet nothing, which brings it to a point in the universe where they'll be able to conclude Cal Kestis' journey and then explain why he's not at the forefront of the Rebel Alliance during the events of the original trilogy. Because whilst the Cal Kestis saga certainly needs a third title, it definitely, hopefully, won't need a fourth, or God forbid, a fifth. 3 is in keeping with Star Wars. It likes to keep its stories in threes, and I don't see that being broken for these games. So we'll give that prospective game the placeholder title of Star Wars Jedi Turgle's Revenge, because he is the true Phantom Menace. These 2 games also have an alarming obsession with dangerous frogs. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody came up with a Darth Turgle theory. On the front of whether or not Respawn will actually get the opportunity to make this third game, considering EA's exclusivity deal has concluded or will conclude before they can get anywhere near complete, well, if other studios are now able to jump in and make Star Wars stories, I see no reason why EA won't be able to enjoy the same privileges, provided they've got a good relationship with Disney. And that loot boxes drama from a few years ago is hardly going to sour that forever, especially considering Ubisoft is now developing a Star Wars game. Whatever happens, it's going to be years away, so there's no point in talking about it for hours on end necessarily, but I thought for the sake of making something, as I don't feel complete unless I'm making some form of content, it was worth at least a little brief discussion. And I believe this video has accomplished that fairly well. Considering I'm functioning on sleep deprivation and spite, I'm sure everybody watching will be a better judge of that than I. Be sure to throw your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section. After all, that's exactly what it is there for. My personal hope is that there is at least a sequel to Star Wars Jedi Survivor, because frankly, it's some of the best Star Wars content we've received since Disney took over. Probably because they're far less involved, but alas. And in my opinion, the story of Cal Kestis certainly deserves a fitting ending. Does it have to be the way I see things going? Not necessarily, but I would be surprised if they had a different take. But thinking long term, I am certainly curious as to what that might prospectively look like in a few years' time, but only time will tell if it ever actually happens. as until something is confirmed, it's simply not confirmed. But that brings us nicely to the end of a video in which I speak slowly to avoid fumbling over my words like a buffoon. Thank you all for watching. I really hope that you've enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. That would be massively appreciated. If you like history, maybe check out our history channel Decades as it approaches 12,000 subscribers. Any support over there, of course, would be extremely helpful, but if you don't like history or you don't like me, both are acceptable, there's no pressure. Anyway, with any luck, hopefully I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point, but until next time, please take care and goodbye. And don't forget to lock your doors tonight because Turgle is coming.